Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Justice for People with Cognitive Impairment. Today we are running this webinar from the Legal Aid New South Wales Central Sydney office. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to elders past and present, and also extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people listening today. My name is Kerry Wright and I work in the Legal Aid New South Wales Community Legal Education branch here in Sydney. Today I'm joined by Corinna Nolan from the Intellectual Disability Rights Service, Justice Advocacy Service. Hi Corinna.
Hi Kerry.
So what we're going to do to start off our webinar is we're going to do some hands up, get some idea of who's out there. So we're going to do a couple of questions and just need to use your little hands up on your sidebar of your control panel. So hands up if you've heard about the Intellectual Disability Rights Service. Let's see if, oh, yes, we've got a few, Corinna.
Great.
I've got 6 people who've said that. Hands up if you've heard about the Criminal Justice Support Network. We've got a few. Great. 1, 2. Okay, and a few questions. Hands up if you've heard about the Justice Advocacy Service. Oh, we've got a few more of those. It looks like the word's getting out. That's great. Fantastic. All right, that's great. Thank you, everybody. You don't need to worry about your hands up anymore. But what we're going to do now is a poll question. So this is a poll just to find out. The question is, how often do you assist clients with cognitive impairment? So we just want you to select one of those options all the time, almost every client. Sometimes, never, or I'm not sure, because you may not actually assess people regarding their cognitive impairment. So I'll just give you some time to complete that. Most of you have voted. Okay, so we might close that poll and share it with you all. So Corinna, we've got 54% of people said sometimes, 31% said all of the time, almost every client. Okay. 8% said never, and 8% said they're not sure. So we've got a good mix of people.
Great.
Yeah, so that's great to have all of you here. So now we're going to have a chat to Corinna. So the purpose of today's webinar is to help you understand how the Justice Advocacy Service supports people with cognitive impairment in contact with the New South Wales criminal justice system. We're going to look at what is the Justice Advocacy Service, who does the Justice Advocacy Service help, the services that Jazz provides. I think I'm going to call it Jazz from now on.
Yes, Jazz is great.
How to get in touch with Jazz. And Corinna, I understand the Criminal Justice Support Network is now the Justice Advocacy Service. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So how did that come about?
Well, the Criminal Justice Support Network, we used to be funded by Ageing, Disability and Home Care, ADIC. And once they stopped operating, that was our funding at jeopardy and the risk of us closing down. So we then went to a tender process, and the New South Wales Department of Justice, Diversity Services, we were successful in that tender. So they are now our new funding, which now the new development of Jazz has come about. The big differences, of course, with that is the Criminal Justice Support Network. We operated to 10 p.m. at night. Our new Jazz program is now operating 24/7, which is fabulous. We were with the Criminal Justice Support Network. We had 3 offices in the state, in Newcastle, Wollongong and Sydney, and now we have 17 around the state. So the growth is massive, and we've grown into a fabulous big organisation, turning into the dream.
Amazing. And do you And I guess people can find details of where all those officers are on your website?
Yes, absolutely. So on the IDRS website, there's a full list of where we're located.
Okay. And when did you start?
We started in July 2019.
Oh, that's not long then.
Yeah, so we're not long. So yes, we're still in the developing, training and getting out there stage.
Okay, thank you. So, Corinna, if our audience today could only remember 3 things from what we talk about, hopefully they'll remember more. These are your 3 things. Why did you choose these 3?
Well, JAS is a 24/7 police support service. I think this is a really important point to make, that clients can access this service if they've been arrested during the night or they're a victim of a crime. We can provide a support person at that station with them and free telephone legal advice as well. Our services are free, so clients don't have to pay for them. Clients do not need to have NDIS to access the JAS service. And we also don't require people to prove their disability to us. So they don't have to show us any evidence that they do have a disability either.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we'll talk a little bit more about those topics as we go through our webinar. So Corinna, tell us, what is the Justice Advocacy Service?
So the Justice Advocacy Service provides support to people with cognitive impairments in contact with the New South Wales criminal justice system. We work with victims, witnesses, suspects and defendants to exercise their rights and fully participate in the process. Our service provides support to both adults and young people with a cognitive impairment. And we use an individual advocacy approach by arranging a support person to be with victims, witnesses, suspects or defendants when they're in contact with police, courts and legal representatives.
You've already told us how JAS came about with the closing of ADACAS and your service being at risk, and then a tender, and you got that money and now it's rolling out. But who actually runs JAS?
So JAS is run by the Intellectual Disability Rights Service and receives our funding from the New South Wales Justice. So we still operate under the Intellectual Disability Rights Service with this new Justice Advocacy Service attached.
And does JAS have a different kind of board or?
Well, they have a working group, not a board as such, but there is a working group that meet regularly. The police are involved in that and different departments of justice which contribute to the running of it, the operation of it and how it's delivered, which is, you know, a great input from all those areas.
Exactly. Yeah, that sounds good. Well, now we're going to do another poll with you all just to see if you've had any experience referring people to the to assistance if they've had an issue in the criminal justice system. So let us know. You can choose more than one option. If you have referred a person with cognitive impairment for legal help, was it to legal aid, your local community legal centre, the Intellectual Disability Rights Service, another legal service, or you haven't done this? People are still voting, thinking about it. Okay. All right, so we'll close that poll. I think everybody's had a go. Okay. And we'll share what it tells us. So, Corinna, 60% have referred to their local community legal centre, and I guess the Intellectual Disability Rights Service is a community legal centre as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, majority of people have used a community legal centre, 53% to legal aid, 13% to another legal service, and 13% they haven't done that. So there's a good mix there. People are using a range of services for their clients with cognitive impairment. So what we'll get you to do now, Corinna, is tell us, I'm still waiting for that to change. Oh, what is cognitive impairment?
So a cognitive impairment is when a person has trouble remembering or learning new things, concentrating, or making decisions that affect their everyday life. And a cognitive impairment can range from mild to severe. So the types of cognitive impairments that we see with people would include an intellectual disability, borderline intellectual functioning, a person with dementia, a person who may have acquired a brain injury, fetal alcohol syndrome or drug and alcohol brain-related damage, and people with autism spectrum. These are some of the areas that we see and work with.
And they're defined under this Act that we've just brought up the information about?
Yes, they are defined under the Mental Health Forensic Provisions Act.
And you mentioned earlier, Corinna, that people don't have to have an actual medical diagnosis to access your service. Is that right?
That's right. They don't. Yes. So, you know, if the police have called us because they do have a person with a disability, we will ask the police how they've come up with that. And they will explain to us, you know, the person is showing signs of difficulty understanding what's happening. They're not really understanding the process that's happening, or questions or anything that's been explained to them. So that's enough for us to get involved and to help that person through the process.
So once you've come to the police station and you have helped them, if you're going to offer ongoing help, do you do any sort of assessment or need any extra evidence?
No, we don't. We don't require any evidence about a person's disability.
Okay, thank you. All right, so who does the Justice Advocacy Service help, Corinna?
So we work with people with cognitive impairments if they're a victim of a crime, if they're a witness to a crime, if they've been suspected of a crime, or a defendant in a crime.
And we've just had a question, Corinna. Do you find the police do make adequate contact?
Yes, and that's really improving as we are expanding and growing. So of course we want more referrals from the police, and we want police contacting us more. And we have always done a lot of education with the police and plans for a lot more of that as well. And they're part of that JAS working group as well that I mentioned earlier. So yes, getting that news out to all the commands throughout New South Wales.
Excellent, thank you. And so you've talked about police stations. Where else do you provide your help?
So police stations, the courtroom, legal appointments, that might be at a legal aid appointment or speaking with a lawyer. We also can attend youth justice conferencing with the client, mediation, court-directed mediation. We can also provide support there. And we also provide support during audio-visual link-up. So if we have a person that's in prison and they're appearing on the screen linking into court, we go into the prison and sit with them and go through that process with them as well.
Right, that's really extensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well that's fantastic. And you said it's all over New South Wales?
Yes, we are a statewide service, and the exciting news now, of course, with JAS is that we are recruiting and training more volunteers. We have justice advocates at those 17 offices throughout New South Wales as well. So we are able to reach more people with a cognitive impairment that would need our help.
So each of the offices, do they have a paid staff person?
Yes, so our justice advocates are a paid staff member, and their role is, whatever their area is, region is, to assist people that fit into these categories of victim, witness, defendant, if it's court or police or legal, and then to organise a trained volunteer to attend court with that person, or police or whatever. Our justice advocates will also do that work and are able to do that more intensive work by referring the client to services during that process as well, once that is identified that there's a need for that.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to look at the clients that you help and the support people. So tell us a bit more about these support people, Corinna.
Are trained volunteers, so they will receive a 2-day training, 1-day court support training and 1-day police support training. We'll try in there to include a visit to the local police station to visit the custody area, so our trained volunteers have exposure to that before they go in and do supports. We have, during that training, we will train our volunteers on communication skills, working with a person with a cognitive impairment, train them about what the legal system looks like, what they can come up against, working with lawyers, working with people from the Justice Department, and helping facilitate that communication between the client and the legal sector.
Okay. And do you have volunteers who have come from diverse cultural backgrounds as well?
Yes, we do. We do have that, which is great. And in Indigenous volunteers as well, we have volunteers from all areas, which is really great. So we will be able to reach that wider community as well.
Definitely. And you were talking about earlier about the lawyers that give legal advice as well?
Yes, so our IDRS lawyers, they will give legal advice for free as well. It is a free legal advice. It is provided at police stations over the telephone, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Okay. And is that the phone number that people ring?
Yes, 1300 665 908.
Okay. And have you had much take up since you started? Do you know how many calls you get?
Yeah, we're really starting to get very busy. So,
okay.
So yeah, there was a report that I had a brief look at, and the numbers have really increased. We're really on target, and yeah, there's a great increase. People are using us, as in police services, community, families, and clients. So,
right. Yep. So the word's definitely getting out. So we're going to do another poll question now, just to check that you're all listening to us and taking in what Corinna's saying. So this poll question is, if your client was taken to the police station at midnight on a Tuesday night, can they call the IDRS lawyer for advice? Yes or no? Just see if people are voting. Looks like nearly all of them have. Okay, so I'll close that poll and I'll share the results with you, Corinna. So 93% said yes, and 7% said no.
Okay.
So what about those no's?
That they think that they couldn't call the police. Well, they certainly can call, and now with the 24-hour service in place, we are operating, so they can call us anytime
on any day of the week.
Anytime, any day, and we're open every single day.
And when people do call, well, here we go. Here's a question: do you provide interpreters if someone rings that line?
So what we would encourage then for the police to use the telephone interpreting service that they do have access to. If we have gone to the police station and we do realise that a person does need an interpreter, we can contact that service by the phone while at the police station if needed.
Okay. And do you find that works all right?
It can. I have used it in the past, and yes, we have an interpreter over the telephone that's assisting.
So the interpreter service is also 24 hours?
Yes, that telephone service is, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And I guess in some cases you may have a support person who speaks that language.
Yes, we do. And with the increase of recruitment and training, we have volunteers from all walks of life and different diverse areas, and it's been really positive that we will be able to provide that better service too.
Do you have a target for your volunteers? How many people are you thinking ultimately you plan to have?
as in volunteers.
Yeah.
We just keep training them, and I mean, I guess it's envisaged that we are going to get very busy, so we want to have that large pool of volunteers so that we can deliver the service that we have promised to deliver.
Yeah. Well, here we go. What do the JAS support people do then?
Well, firstly, we do facilitate and support and encourage clients to participate in their matters actively. And our volunteers, the main role is facilitating communication between the legal centre, the legal service and the client. We will help clients to remember appointments and know what to expect. Understanding and exercising rights is a big area. We spend a lot of time making sure the client has understood their rights. And we never ask a client, do you understand that? And we don't assume that a client hasn't understood something. We'll just get them to tell us what they thought that was all about. And then we'll know if we need to go into something more involved with them. Any legal outcomes, maybe if there was bail conditions, AVOs, court outcomes, we spend time going through these to make sure that the person understands them and complies with them and understands what happens if they don't. If we're involved in that support role and communication is an issue with police or lawyers or whoever may be speaking, then we'll be checking that understanding all the time and maybe requesting and asking if the person from the legal sector could rephrase that, ask that in a different way, just to make sure that person has got that message. And any follow-ups, we'll also do that. In particular, the justice advocates will do the referrals where it's needed. And sometimes that has really, well, most of the times has really good outcomes in court because, you know, magistrates want to see that somebody's being linked in with a service to try and reduce offending behaviours. We're there, of course, to keep people calm and try and reduce those anxieties and provide that emotional support as well. And if there was any paperwork, maybe a legal aid application or something like that that somebody needed that assistance with, we would help with that as well.
And I've got a question here, Corinna. Given the person with a cognitive impairment is likely vulnerable, is it common that a family member or carer or other informal support person is present with the individual also?
I mean, that happens a lot, and we would have somebody else there, which is great, and can be that great support for the person that they're with. We would always explain our role is to do all that facilitating communication, helping the person to understand and exercise the rights and that legal support, just so they know exactly what our role is there, and that it's great to have them alongside for that extra support and information that might be very helpful to the person.
Well, that answers this person's second question, because they were asking, are they present when the support person from JAS is working with the individual? So you don't say that they can't be present?
No, absolutely not. We just try and encourage them to let us do our role, what we're there to do, and it's great to have them there for that support and extra information, and you know, the client themselves will be comfortable with having them there. But again, just reassuring them what our role and what we're doing and what we're there for is to help the client understand those things and get that communication flowing between client and the legal sector.
And I guess at the same time, the support person or the family member may also be learning about the system and learning quite a lot at the same.
Yeah, look, I guess the only time we'd probably discourage a family member would be if somebody was in custody at a police cell and maybe mom or brother or whoever it might be want to be that support person. We would probably then try and encourage, let us do that support, because it can be very stressful for a family member to listen to things, to be there. It's a very stressful situation. And if that did happen, having our support in there at the police station and communicating with the family member and keeping them up to date about what's happening and where the process is up to.
Okay, so your volunteers do that as well. So they sort of act as a go-between.
Yes,
during those times.
And our volunteers are supported all the time by their advocates. So they can get any extra assistance if needed to talk about this with family members or services that might be involved.
And with the volunteers, do they get any support themselves, like if they need to debrief after a stressful night in the police station, for example?
Definitely. So they have access to us all the time during that whole support process. So if it is 2 in the morning and one of us are on call, then we'll be up with them during that. They can ask us questions as much as they want, come back to us as much as they want. Afterwards, we'll debrief with the volunteer, make sure they get home and they're home and they're feeling okay. They also provide us with a report after every support. And if there was any ongoing concerns or worry for the volunteers, we have a free counselling service that they can access as well.
Okay. And I've got another question here. I find the justice system tells us of court dates while they are in court. Does JAS help supports to navigate clear communication with the legal team? So I guess they're just wondering if it helps with information flow between the lawyers and the client as well, and the courts and the client?
Yeah, so if there's new court dates and that being mentioned in court, then we collect those dates, make sure the client is aware of those dates. After a matter's finished in court, our support people with the client will wait outside the courtroom and wait for the lawyer to come out once they're finished and get the lawyer to explain what's happened, what the next court date is, what that next process is as well.
Okay. And then someone else has written, can people access legal advice when not at the police station, as someone with cognitive impairment may not remember to call while there?
Yes, so people can access the IDRS part of us, the Intellectual Disability Rights Service. If they needed legal advice on a variety of matters, they would be able to call up and say that they're looking for some legal advice about something. And again, that is free advice.
Yes, but from what I understand, you're trying to train the police that they will call automatically. It's not really up to the person to say, oh, I need to talk to IDRS at that time? Or?
If at a police station and in a police cell, then we will have a lawyer ready to give that advice over the telephone. Outside of that, if a person wasn't at the police station or at court, they could also use our service for legal advice if that was all they required.
Okay, and that's generally over the phone, isn't it?
Yes, over the phone.
Okay, so now we're going to look at a couple of people and get you, Karina, to tell us how JAS would help them. So this is Amy. Amy's a victim of crime. So how would the JAS support people help Amy?
So what we would normally do there when we have a victim of a crime or someone comes to us that needs help, we would arrange time to speak with police so that Amy would be able to give her statement to the police. Once that's arranged, we might often request of the police for a more comfortable room for a victim to sit in, so they feel more relaxed and comfortable. With victims in the past, timelines can be very difficult. It's very traumatic for any victim to retell what's happened. So if it is too stressful, what we've done in the past is maybe do a statement for 45 minutes and then leave it, come back on another day, do more of the statement. So the police are quite open to us adjusting that to make it better for the victim to be able to give their story and to tell their side of the story. So we help facilitate that and make it easier, I guess, for the victim.
Okay.
During that statement, we will request breaks for the victim. We will check for, they've understood something. Maybe if the police have asked something and it's clear that Amy hasn't understood what's been asked of her, then we'll go back to that again. We will also, if the matter proceeded to court, we would go through that court process with Amy as well, providing support. We do some court preparation for her as well. Maybe if she was going to give evidence through the CCTV room, so if it, for example, a district court matter, she would be able to sit in a secluded room, not in the courtroom, to give her evidence, and we would arrange for her to see that room before she would actually have to do that, and sit next to her when she is doing that. And we'd also do any referrals for AME to victim services as well that came up and was required.
Okay, thank you. So we'll now have a look at Michael. So Michael was a witness to crime. What sort of help would you provide to Michael?
So much the same as when we work with a victim of a crime, you know, for him to retell that story and to explain to the police what he has seen. Then we would sit with him, make sure the communication is flowing, checking for understanding, asking the police to reword if there was a communication issue identified. If it did proceed to court, we would again go through that court process with Michael, support him at court. And if it was a situation where it was his first time giving evidence, very nervous about that, then we could ask for access to the courtroom for him to be able to give his evidence, so he could see the courtroom before that and become familiar with that. So we could do that court preparation stuff as well, calling him the day before, arranging to meet him, and being there throughout.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, we'll have a look at Kim. So Kim is a crime suspect with the police. How would you help Kim?
So with Kim, if Kim was at a police station, then we would be able to offer somebody to be at the police station with Kim. We would go through Kim's rights at the police station, and we would have a lawyer that would give advice over the telephone. Kim would receive that advice over the phone, and that advice is really about whether to do an interview or not to do an interview, and about their rights, about Kim's rights while at the station. Our support person would then hear that advice as well, so we're all on the same page and we know what's happening, and we would help communicate that to police, and normally get our lawyer to tell the police as well that, for example, Kim's been told not to do an interview or whatever it may be, and get the lawyer to explain that to the custody manager at the police station as well. We would stay with Kim throughout that process until the police decided what they were going to do, whether Kim was going to get bail or be bail refused. If the matter proceeded to court, we would then link Kim in with a lawyer if there was legal aid, for example, or ALS in the area, and we'd attend that appointment with them and help facilitate that communication. And then again, go through the court process with Kim, explaining everything, finding his courtroom, and facilitating communication there too, and any referrals that might come up during that process, and we'd go to every single court appearance.
Okay. Wow, that's a comprehensive service, I must say. Okay, so now we're just going to have a quick chat about training. You've talked a little bit about training. So what other training, other than training for your support people, are you planning on delivering?
Well, for years we have been delivering training at the Goulburn Police Academy. So we train there and Hurstville monthly for custody managers, the officers who look after the custody area of the police station. And part of that training, obviously, we introduce our service and what we can provide, helping the police to identify a person with a cognitive impairment, some communication skills for the police around communicating with a person with a cognitive impairment, and making them think about adjusting their communication when they do have a person with a disability in custody as well. So that is delivered monthly, and those police that attend that come from all over New South Wales.
Wow. What about justice staff?
So with this new project now that we have the JAZZ program, we've got a training needs analysis happening at the moment, which started a month ago, and it will be finalised in January. And part of that analysis is for them to connect with all areas of the Justice Department, from judges, magistrate, correctives, police, court staff, anyone, court users, anyone involved, and finding out what the training needs are, what understanding people have of cognitive impairment, the difficulties people have, communication techniques, all that kind of stuff. So they're going to come back to us in January with what they have found and look at a year, like the year ahead, and where we can deliver that training, how we reach all these areas in New South Wales and what kind of training that people are requiring and that they need.
And we've got up there a note that people can contact Matt French at JAS to ask about the training that's coming up.
Yes, so Matt French is our new training and capacity manager, and we're not limited to training. So if community services wanted training, clients needed something, education around anything, but certainly give him a call, give us a call, and we can talk through your needs or what you feel might benefit, and look about how we can work through that and develop some training around that to work within the services area of need.
Fantastic. I have a question here. I'm just thinking you may have answered it. Are there procedures in place for supporting people who have communication difficulties through participation with police and court, such as visuals or social stories, or is it based individually?
It's case by case, and depending on what the needs of the client is. If there was particular communication difficulties and there was family members or services involved and a person required aids to communicate, we would work very closely with the person, with the services that are working with them, and police or courts or whoever it was, to make sure that we're meeting those communication needs.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to talk about how do we get in touch. I think someone's asked about that. They'd like an email contact. Here's your email contact and your phone contact.
Yes.
And on the website, I understand there's a referral fact sheet. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that is up there as well, so people can refer to that and have a look.
And what is the referral? Like, what happens when people ring JAS and try to refer someone?
So when you call the 1300 number, you will go through to our intake team, and the intake team will take the details of the referring person. We will take the client details. We must also confirm the client has consented to the referral, that they do want our help. We will collect support details, whether it's court, police, legal, details for the client, contact details, and we will also require any other person's details who might be involved in a matter involving the person. So maybe if there was a victim or a defendant or whatever the situation may be, we would require that information as well.
And if anyone has any questions based on what we've talked about today, can they use that email address?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. at idrs.org.au.
Yes.
And the website address is www.justiceadvocacy, that's one word, .org.au. And the phone number is 1300 665 908. And I've also just brought up on the screen some information that New South Wales Justice has a resource. So you have to go to court, and it's for people with cognitive impairment. And the email that you'll receive after the webinar has a link to that resource, plus a link to the JAS website. So hopefully that's all the contact details that you'll need. So what we're going to do now is our last poll question. So I'll just pull that up and launch it. This is our poll question. Do you feel more confident about making a referral to JAS after doing this webinar? The answers are yes, no, sort of, but I know I can ring JAS to get more information. So I'm just waiting for everyone to vote. Most people have stayed with us, which is great. Okay, so I'll close that and share the results. So 81% have said yes.
Great.
So that's a great outcome. Thank you, Corinna. And 19% have said sort of, but they know they can ring you and get more information. So I think Corinna would definitely encourage that.
Yes,
people
absolutely.
to get in touch using those different contacts that are on the screen now. Okay, so we've come to the end of our webinar. We're just going to say thank you, and if you've got any other questions, type them in your question panel, or you can email the Legal Aid, cle@legalaid.newsouthwales.gov.au, and we can pass on any questions to Corinna. So we'll just stay online in case any of you have any other questions. So I'd also like to let you know that Legal Aid New South Wales have a number of podcasts and webinars on other topics you may be interested in learning about. We've got a series about the NDIS and also the new sentencing laws that came into effect last year. You can find these on the Legal Aid New South Wales YouTube channel, and a link will be in the email that's sent after we close the webinar. So we've got, thanks for organising this webinar. Quick question, would it be possible to get a copy of the recording? So that was my next thing I was going to say, is in about an hour you'll receive an email with links to the feedback survey and all the resources we've discussed during the webinar today. If you go onto the Legal Aid YouTube channel next week, we will have the recording of this webinar up there. Does the assigned support person remain the same throughout the whole process?
Yes, they can, and we do try to keep the same support person. If we knew that a matter was going to run for quite a length of time, then what we would do is organise perhaps 2 support people with the advocate as that backup, so that we could share that support, but the person will have the same 2 people, for example, during their support.
And how long do you think people generally stay involved with someone?
Anywhere from 6 months to 3 years can be how long things can go for in the justice system.
And that would be through a number of courts as well?
Yeah, well, we can see people in the local court anywhere between 6 months to 2 years. And if a matter ran from local court into district court, again, that could go up to 3 years.
Okay. And the next question is, does Jazz work with parents or carers of minors who are in custody or suspected of a crime, or do they only work on behalf of the individual?
We do work, if there was a young person with a cognitive impairment in custody, we would work with the person in custody. We are looking at that. We have been asked this question before, but we work with the family as well, but the person with the disability would be who we would work with in custody.
Okay. And the other question is, what if they're victims of crime and they're being questioned in places such as at school? Do you support them in that context?
We do. We would normally encourage that to happen at a police station. If the police did contact us and said that they were going to talk to a victim of a crime in a school, we would certainly look at that and look at maybe one of our advocates would go to do such a support. Our volunteers would go to the police station or to the court or to a legal office. We wouldn't be sending them to schools and that, but one of our staff may be able to assist with that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you've got different backup options.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just wondering if there's any other questions. Nothing has come through. Oh, we got a thank you.
Oh, thanks for listening.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for listening and participating today. I'd like to thank you very much, Corinna. That's fantastic. I think this service is amazing and it's a great support for vulnerable people in our criminal justice system. So we'll say goodbye for now, and you've got all the contact details, and watch out for that email that comes after we close the webinar, that you can follow up some of the contacts and resources that we spoke about today. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Kerry.